Denny Siebel sometimes.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our council committee meeting for April 26, 2022. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional territories and the oral practices of the Blackfoot Nation, which include the Siksika, the Kainai, and the Piikani. We also acknowledge the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, the Métis Nation, Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. We're making this acknowledgement to demonstrate our continuing efforts to work together as we strive for reconciliation through increased and collective learning. Okay, to the agenda. Number one on the agenda here, a letter of support to the Brooks Anti-Racism Society. Richard Mack.
Thank you.
You've got the floor.
Through the chair to Mayor and Council, the Brooks Anti-Racism Society, or BARS for short, is applying for the Canadian Heritage's Community Support Multiculturalism and Anti-Racism Initiatives Event Component Grant. The proposal is for a 1-month event in June, which is comprised of 4 categories and 2 programs. Provided council is satisfied with its capacity to put forth this event and its sustainability to continue the initiatives past June 30th, 2022, a letter of support will be provided to BARS. Therefore, administration is recommending that the City of Brooks write a letter of support to BARS for the application to the Canadian Heritage's Community Support, Multiculturalism, and Anti-Racism Initiatives Event Component Grant.
Okay, I'll open it up the floor for questions. I just want to mention too that Councillor Mohammed Idris is zooming in from Saudi Arabia, and it's 1:30 in the morning there. So thank you for being so diligent there, Councillor Idris. Okay, any questions? Oh, go ahead.
Or, I see we have a guest here, so
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
she could introduce herself and a little bit about her. Yeah.
Yes. Hi, my name is Radette, and I am the Executive Director of the Brooks Anti-Racism Society, and I'm the one who's asking you for the letter of support. I've been working with the Anti-Racism Society for the past 2 years, since June 2020, and I run a majority of the initiatives and projects. Yeah, that's basically me.
So maybe explain to us some of the projects and initiatives you've taken in that time period.
Yes. So over the past 2 years, we've been working on a couple of different projects and initiatives, but one that I'm very proud of is Mother's Village. And so Mother's Village provides free opportunities for anyone in the community that has one or both parents that are working full or part-time jobs and that needs help with their children. It's basically trying to build better connections within our community, but also offering free childcare services for anyone that we noticed that there's many parents that work A shift and B shift at JBS, and there is a tough time finding adequate childcare. Either maybe some parents, it's hard for them to switch off. One person is in A shift and sometimes they go overtime, and so it's hard for them to switch off with their kids, and we don't really have daycares that can help with that situation, so we help with that. And another part of Mother's Village is about creating better connections for mothers and realizing that regardless of what we look like and where we're from, the struggle of being the mother is the same, and trying to provide different opportunities for mothers through that. Yeah, that's our biggest initiative and the one that I'm most proud of.
Councillor Idris.
Thank you, Mayor Petrie. I actually have to say that I have been involved with the Brooks Anti-Racism Society for a while, actually since the beginning. There's a lot of good work. It's a grassroots initiative that started just after the situation in Minnesota, in the rallies that we had here, and few people who are really believing in this idea of, a racism-free community, although that is a plan that sometimes is difficult to achieve, came together and started this. There is, Bernadette talked about the Mother's Village, but there is a sports club that have been running now for about a year, I believe. There is some community initiatives that people that needed help in support and have been supported by the group. So I applaud the work that they are doing, and I'm proud to be part of that. I do have some questions, though, regarding the project or the proposal that's submitted, and maybe Radet, you can help me understand some of the things that is in the proposal. So my first question is, why did you go with the events stream rather than the project stream? I have looked at the grant, and there is two streams. In what you are providing looks more like a project in the sense that it is something that you have already been doing, and it is something that you think you would like to continue doing. So when you put it in an event, it looks like something that has a beginning and an end versus what you are trying to do, which is having a sustainable programming.
Well, my answer is that after speaking with the women from the Alberta level and the provincial level and the federal level, they recommended that we would apply for this funding first so that we could create a track record and hopefully get program funding so we can continue what we're doing. One thing that I would like to mention is that regardless if we get the funding or not, the project will continue. We've been doing it self-funded for the past 2 years, and we plan to continue doing it regardless if we get the funding or not. But this was the project that has the closest due date, the fastest we could get the funding, so we could hopefully get more projects running faster. And it was just recommended to us as the best option.
Okay, thank you. Another question I also have is regarding partnerships. There was a question around partnerships in the proposal. If you have any, do you work with anybody in the community? Because one of the things that we pride ourselves here in Brooks is that we try to work in collaborative with different organizations. There are a number of different organizations in the community that serve similar goals. Have you reached out to them? Are you trying to do something with them?
So far, what we've been doing is trying to fill the gaps in the community that programs that may not be filling. So what I've been doing over the past 6 months is trying to figure out what programs in the community are already running, and so that we don't step on their toes. And also a big part of BARS is community connections, and so we don't want to take anything away from other programs, but we want to provide a link. We have a lot of people that come into the office and ask us questions, and so we would we would like much more to just say it's much easier for you to go to BCIS or SPEC or programs that are running through the schools or with the city rather than us providing them. But we haven't created direct connections with any of these places in partnership terms. But we have, in a sense, a referral program where if we have someone come in, we try to connect them we try to connect them with someone that can get them the help the quickest.
My final thing is around sustainability. You are asking for a significant amount of money, and you suggested that the program will continue one way or the other. Do you have any ideas in terms of what's your sustainability plans?
So far, we have a pretty good volunteer program that has been running, and we've trying to grow. So for you to benefit from one of our projects, you need to volunteer an hour of your time to another project. And so this will hopefully mitigate that issue of the continuation. I would like to say that we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 years, but my hope is that we can continue this to a point where we don't need BARS anymore.
Thank you.
Any idea when you'll get the grant?
Hopefully, from my understanding, we spoke with Sabrina, and she said that as soon as we hand this in, we can get an answer by the end of May.
Okay. Okay, any other questions? Okay, Councillor Wardrop.
Thank you. So I have a couple questions. So you have some very big goals here. which are all commendable. I am totally on board with all of that. My only question is, because they are so broad and so sweeping, how will you know that you've met your goal? Like, how is this, I don't see a lot of measurable outcomes that, you know, we could say, like, has this program been successful? Or how will you know that you've been successful here?
So we have a survey that we do with anybody that joins our projects now. So at the beginning of our project, we kind of started with what are you looking for and how has the lack of this service affected you? And then we're hoping to do a collection of surveys at the end where we ask how has this benefited you? And I think that's how we're going to get our measurables. But other than that, we haven't really looked towards how we can measure it out other than the survey.
Because the goal is that this benefits the community as a whole, right? I guess I would encourage maybe you guys to plan ahead that way. Like, how will you know that you've reached, this is benefiting the community as a whole? Because I think we would all love to see all of your goals come to fruition. There's another question too. So the themes here that you want to address, I see lots of opportunities for newcomers, for immigrants to kind of like access these things that maybe they're not too sure about or they're not confident advocating for themselves. Could you speak more to, I didn't see a whole lot of like specifically the actions being taken to eliminate discrimination and racism and prejudice in the community. So I think that was like a part of your big, like kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Mission statement, right? That the community as a whole could benefit from this. The programs seem to be more focused on newcomers, like finding things more accessible in the community.
We're taking the aspect or like the route of, I think that there's like this lack of connection in our community, and we think that building connections will create more empathy. I think that a really big reason why racism or prejudice exists is the lack of empathy or the lack of reasoning of seeing that human is just a human being regardless of how you look at them. And I think that by creating these types of programs where people are feeling like they're a part of our community, it breaks the barriers of, you know, you're just this person from this place, and people become more confident in where they are and more confident to be called someone from Brooks, you know, and be proud to be someone from Brooks.
Great job so far.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Hard question.
Now, here's some easy questions. I'm just curious, whereabouts is your office?
It is located right beside the Gateway office.
And the Gateway office is?
The old KFC.
The old KFC is where? No, sorry. Just teasing.
Across from Rich Shoe Store.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Yes. And we are switching as we're speaking, we're just switching from the white building into the brown building there. But our address is 412 2nd Street West.
Okay.
From my memory.
And I see you're a nonprofit.
Yes.
And so I'm just curious, do you work with a board? Are you the executive director by chance? Just some of that maybe information too.
Yes, we do work with the board, and I am the executive director. Yes, those are my two answers.
Okay, those are great answers.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Councillor Jessica?
Yes, thank you very much. You know, there's lots of programs or events appear and consume a lot of effort and resources and don't amount to very much. I guess I'd like to question a little bit on what your track record is like for participation. And also, you mentioned here multiple times that you already have a large group of people wanting to participate. So what kind of a participation number are you expecting or hoping to achieve?
Well, with this specific event, we're hoping to have around 200 people participate. Right now, we just go based off of word of mouth. So anybody that comes in for personal services, we have a lot of people that come in just for, they need somebody to talk to or they don't know where to get help. They need somebody to mitigate maybe family issues that they don't really understand how to move forward with the RCMP. And so we have collected all of those names, and everybody that has already been a part of like this one-on-one process is wanting to become a part of the event. And then we've spoken to different schools and different communities, the Orthodox Church communities, some kids from the Mesquite, and other kids from the park. What I do is I basically get my brother to play basketball with people and tell them about what we do and get him to write down their names, and hopefully they come. I believe in if they can see our faces, hopefully they can see that this is something that can benefit our community and they want to be a part of this bigger community.
Councillor Wardrop?
Hard questions. There was a mention a few times of the struggle that newcomers have with the English language. That's an issue close to my heart as an educator. My question is, do you work with BCalc or other organizations to provide you guys resources, or how are you hoping to specifically address that issue?
So with the English learning issue, something that we've been doing over the past 2 years is like asking people why it's hard for them to maybe grasp the English language. And a big thing for them was how their learning style is. And so we're working with a couple of students from Mount Royal University that are in the education program and University of Calgary. I'm a student at University of Calgary, so I just asked around. And we're wanting to develop a small project that helps people better understand their learning styles and kind of taking it into like a kindergarten style learning where I think that we forget that even though it's adults that are learning English, like we probably should start at a first grade level, and because there's like this feeling of shame of, oh, I'm 40 or I'm 50 or I'm 60 and I can't learn in a way that other people are learning. So trying to make it a little bit more fun and a little bit easier and hitting the VARC learning, visual, auditory, reading, and kinesthetic way of learning through English learning, and that's going to hopefully be a part of our project as well.
Right, and this is for specifically adults is what you're talking about,
Specifically adults, yes.
Okay.
We mostly have been speaking with adults. I think that with English-speaking children, it's a lot easier for them to learn English from speaking, but we have a big issue in our community, especially the African community, where you kind of just stay within your African community, whichever country you're from. You just speak in Amharic or Oromo or French. I mean, you can speak French here, so that's benefit. But so what we're trying to do is kind of break those borders and help them realize that it's okay, and you're not quote unquote stupid for not knowing or not knowing how to understand English, and just being open to showing them that it's okay to start from level 1,
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions? Good. Well, thank you for your time this afternoon, and good luck with the grant there.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I really
thanks,
appreciate it.
Thanks for attending there.
Thank you, Reddit.
Okay, number 2 on the list here, the Arts Culture Heritage Board Grant. Natasha.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. Through the chair to mayor and council, the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board was formed in December 2016, and the board's mandate is to act as an advisory board to assist council and the city in providing opportunities for arts, culture, and heritage programs and facilities in the city of Brooks. In December 2021, the City Council awarded $10,000 for the 2022 fiscal year to the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board to distribute as grant funding towards local community events, programs, and initiatives. And as a result, the board has developed the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board grant process and to award grant funding to individuals and groups in the city of Brooks who intend to deliver arts, culture, and heritage opportunities within that city municipal boundary. Therefore, the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board would like to forward to Council Committee the following motion made on April 5th, 2022, during the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board meeting. In addition, please note that the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board process and documents were discussed and reviewed by the board during the meeting, and some revisions were provided. So it was moved by T. Wardrop and seconded by R. Massey that the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board grant process documents be accepted as amended, and this motion was carried. And the recommendation is that Council Committee approve the proposed Arts, Culture, and Heritage Board grant process documents.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Wardrop?
This is just more of a comment, I guess. The rubric that you use to measure the applicants, it's the same one I think that we used for the Parks and Rec Board, and it was a little bit problematic. We found, and I'm not sure how you guys found it, but you may want to look at giving points for applicants who do not meet the requirement. So under here where it says, so exceeds requirement, you get 3 points, meets requirements is 2, and then requirements not met, you still get a point. And so as we went through, certain applications seems to be inflated because you still get you get a point. And even applicants that were ineligible, as we went through, there's not really a space to disqualify them for being ineligible at all. So we were like, I guess we'll go through the criteria, and it looks pretty good on paper, but really they don't actually meet the eligibility requirements right off the bat. So there's just a couple things that we kind of ran into when we were going through that process. And I'm not sure if you guys have gone through that process yet, but it might be worth taking another look at that rubric. The Parks and Rec Board decided that we would do that. We'd form a separate committee and kind of rework the rubric a little bit so that it made things a bit more clear, especially for those applicants too that they're not approved, and so they want to see the justification behind, well, where did I fall short? And it would be perhaps a little tricky to explain to somebody, oh, well, I've got 20 some points. Well, those all points, they were all added up because you didn't meet the criteria. It sounds like you their application should have been more successful than it might have ended up being. So I would just recommend that you look at that rubric. I know you have a teacher on the board, so he should be able to help you out with the rubric.
Through the chair to Councillor Wardrop, I appreciate the feedback. I think that's great. And just to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, so you're suggesting to put a column for ineligible and that it's awarded 0 points in the grading matrix.
I think, yeah, I'm fine with that, yeah. And
Okay, good.
because it's so similar to the RUG grant, that's where we got the from on that there. But it's nice to learn the challenges you had, as we go forward on that. And just on a timeline on this, we're hoping the recommendation is approved here today. Then I think it goes to council on Monday, and then we're a little behind because we wanted to get those applications out and the money distributed by, I think, Natasha, is it June? Well, by July anyway. We'll make the decisions by the end of the month or end of July. I forget what the dates. I had them on here. Okay, Amanda, go ahead. Yeah.
And through the chair to Mayor Petrie, we did connect. You're right. It is the RUG template that we worked off of, the Recreation User Group Grant one. So, it was lovely to be able to use this pre-developed template, and then the board used it to make it their own. I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay, well, while you're thinking of Amanda wanted to say something, so we'll let Amanda talk.
Okay, go ahead.
Through the chair to Mayor and Council, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Natasha, but I believe that maybe these documents in the process is going to be reviewed at an annual timeline. So maybe they could like try this the first go, and then of course they can amend the documents when they do the review to add that a particular column if the timeline is something that's expedient.
Yeah, Councilor Woodruff?
Yeah, just to follow up on that point, the rec board did use this, this criteria, and it was fine.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it, like, I'm not saying that I don't think it's, like, it wouldn't be appropriate to use. Just, we found that it's just like for next time, we would hope to make these improvements for the next time going forward, so.
Yeah, I have to agree with Amanda.
Yeah.
Like, we'll go ahead with it this
Yeah,
year, and then we have to
absolutely, yeah.
review it all the time. No different than on the rec board. You guys are probably reviewing the process on that there too, yeah.
And just to jump
And-
back in,
Go ahead. Yeah.
sorry, there was a bit of a lag there. Just to jump back in on the item, I forgot it. It came back to me. So I did connect with Randy about just some of the suggestions you guys had from the first round. So it sounds like this might have been some extra suggestions you guys kind of noticed and came up with maybe from the second round, because you guys would have just gone through all those application processes. So yes, some extra good suggestions. And Amanda is right. There is in the criteria that revisions of the application process for the board grant will be presented to council as needed. So any revisions that we need to do, we'll come back and let you guys know. And that there is a portion in the grant that also that the grant process documents will be revised as needed. Because I do think there's a piece of learning as you go on how to make it easier and how to improve it.
Okay, Randy, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just through the chair to mayor and council. So the rec board did use, if you look at the bottom board review and recommendation, reason for rejecting if applicable, the board did make note of any ineligible applications there, even though they did go through and score it. So that board is moving forward with looking at the rubric to kind of clean it up, like Councilor Wardrop said. But there was that space there that was used in the process. If there was an ineligible application that didn't meet the criteria, it was noted in that section, so.
Any
Thanks,
other
Randy.
questions? Okay, guess we'll vote on the recommendation as presented there. All in favor? Okay. I forgot number 1 too. We were going to. I didn't think we had a vote on the recommendation about the grant. So all in favor of the first one, number 1, the letter of support. All in favor? Okay. Good. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Natasha. Oh, sorry, Jenny.
Thanks, everyone.
No, well, no, just a recommendation because the motions have to go to council. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Natasha. Okay, number 3, the Brooks and District Chamber of Commerce Trade Show Venue Rent Reduction Request, and Amanda will speak to this here.
Thank you. Through the chair to mayor and council, the Brooks and District Chamber of Commerce Trade Show Venue Rent Reduction Request was referred to council committee during the April 18th council meeting so that further information could be acquired. Attached is the letter of the request and the Brooks and District Chamber of Commerce's most recent financial information. The balance sheet shows the chamber's liquid asset slimly covers near-term liabilities as long as the outstanding loan payable is not due in the short term. The chamber's year-to-date profit and loss statement shows that the chamber is in a deficit position. The trade show is the chamber's major fundraiser, which would improve their financial situation. It is important to note that the trade show was not held in 2021, and the 2020 trade show was less successful than previous shows due to the COVID-19. At the time of this report, the chamber trade show exhibitors for approximately 46 of the 92 spots in the field house and 9 of the 16 spots in the flex hall. The rental fee of the field house and the flex hall is $8,334.26. The chamber will not need to rent the curling rink from the curling club unless the number of exhibitors dramatically increases. Also included in the attachments is the budget for the 2022 trade show, the projections for the trade show to date, and the financials relating to past trade shows. Chamber Executive Margaret Plumtree noted that vendors recovering financially from the pandemic may be a contributing factor to the lower exhibitor numbers and that a reduction in facility rentals would partially be passed on to the exhibitors in lower participation fees. Given the pandemic, the need to rebound, and the benefit of the trade show to the city and the local businesses, it would be justified to provide assistance. Therefore, administration recommends that City of Brooks waive the rental fees for the Field House and the Flex Hall for the Brooks and District Chamber of Commerce 2022 trade show.
Okay, questions? Counselor Goodenough.
I'd speak in favor of this. I'm just curious though, would it not, because they only have 9 for the Flex Hall, I think, was that what I read there? 9 out of a possible 14, I think, 16. Wouldn't it just make sense to move it all into the one room, into the Field House?
It'll depend
Or
on-
whatever the bigger room is, sorry.
It depends upon the space that the exhibitor or the vendor needs. Sometimes they might need that bigger space. Randy, if you want to speak on size of vendor space.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Goodenough. So there's a few factors that come into play with their space. One is access to electricity. So we have a lot of like power drops in the Field House. The other thing is I know they had a separate space for like home-based vendors and they were trying to keep those separate from the other like bigger commercial vendors as well. I know they were also looking at bringing in some bouncers and stuff like that. They were going to do that outside, and I'm not sure if any of the modifications to their event have changed the locations of that. But there's a few different factors that come into play, and I think a lot of it just kind of depends on what the vendors are requiring of them as well.
Okay, any other questions? I'm in favor of this too. The chamber over the years has given a lot of money to the city of Brooks there. And I know we're giving them a break this year, but I think it's important that we try to keep the viability of the chamber alive, because I look at the long term. If the chamber goes and then we basically lose the trade show for years down the road and we don't get that money back. So I think we can go ahead this year, and it's only a one-time deal, and then be reassessed next year there too. So, okay, any other questions or any other comments? Okay. To the recommendation, all those in favor? Okay, carried there, yeah. Okay, for the best part of the evening here, ladies and gentlemen, the 2022 tax rate bylaw considerations. Shall we?
Thank you through the chair to mayor and council, and I hope I don't put Councillor Idriss to sleep. However, so administration is preparing the annual tax rate bylaw pursuant to Section 353 of the Municipal Government Act. And typically we prepare that bylaw based on the revenues that we've determined need to be collected in the current year's budget, or in the 2022 budget in this case. There are a few factors that I wanted to go through prior to just summarizing what that looks like. And obviously the biggest one is the RCMP contract issues. So I just have a little bit of history here. I tried to lay it out as clearly as possible. We'll see how that works. But in the 2022 budget, the city anticipated additional RCMP costs as follows. We knew that there would be a retro pay adjustment for the years 2017 to 2021, estimated based on the numbers that we had at the time to be about $727,730. This amount was funded from the stabilization reserve in the budget. The other costs that we knew would be increased, or we anticipated increased, would be an impact to our population, a population impact adjustment. And that would be due to increasing the city's allocation of pooled cost from 70% to 90%, which would occur if our population hit 15,000. The adjustment was estimated to be about $603,695, and it also factored in contract increases. So the retro pay that increased in the years before, we'd have to catch up to that as well. And those accumulated pay increase at the time, again, were based on the RCMP forecasts. So in the budget, this increase would be phased in using a combination of tax increases and reserves. The reserve to be used was the operating contingency reserve, up to the amount of the 2021 ICF revenue from the County of Newell, which is, of course, the Intermunicipal Collaboration Framework Agreement. The tax increase for 2022 was 2.1%, and that would increase our revenues by $258,842. And then for 2022, we would have, based on the scenario that we are budgeting with, required $344,853 of the above-mentioned reserve to cover the estimated cost. So with the Canada Census information confirming that the city's population did not reach 15,000 in 2021, as well as new information received from the RCMP regarding the retro pay estimates, the impact of those pay increases on our contract amounts, the city's budget assumptions have drastically changed. I just wanted to mention a few points of consideration. There's positives and negatives, obviously. So first, the RCMP have provided the city with new estimates regarding our share of retro pay for RCMP members for their fiscal years 2017-18 through to 21-22, following the settlement of their union negotiations. The total amount is estimated to be between $966,000 and $998,000. Again, we had estimated about $727 in the budget. So in 2021, the city was already charged for a quarter of 1 year, so $86,586. And in 2021, that was a negative variance for us, but that amount has already been paid from the total. So although the population of Brooks is under 15,000, the city does continue to be, and the city continues to be responsible for 70% of the pooled RCMP costs. Updated forecasts indicate that our budget needs to be increased by just over $200,000 to cover the increase to the RCMP contract, even with the 70% allocation remaining in place. So again, all of those retro pays, we still have to catch up in the contract. These forecasted increases mostly pertain to adjusting the contracts to the new pay rates which were negotiated. Finally, the RCMP have also advised us that effective April 1st, 2022, a 4% pay increase will apply for RCMP members, and that effective April 1st, 2023, a 2.5% pay increase will apply. In addition to this, the costs of newly legislated requirements will come into play somewhere in the future. There's vague information to this from them, but that includes the cost of body-worn cameras, which we know that the feds is going to cover the first year of the rollout, but we don't really know what that will look like. And after that, it will be the municipalities' responsibilities. And we also know that there's increased psychological support services and other new initiatives that will be passed on to the municipalities in near futures. However, updated forecasts beyond 21-22 year, their 21-22 year, which has in fact ended, haven't been made available, so we don't really know what their forecasts look like. With all of this information, administration is recommending the following: that the 2.1% tax increase that was budgeted for in 2022, amounting to revenues of $258,842, remain in the budget to cover the RCMP cost increases, and those are estimated at this time to be about just over 200,000, or just about 201,000, and that the remaining revenue can cover 58,000 of the extra retro pay. The remaining retro pay that the city would be responsible for in 2022 would be up to $853,000 which could be funded from the stabilization reserve. With this approach, the city would not be using any of the funding from the operating contingency reserve, and that amount will remain in reserves and be available for other purposes. The second recommendation or recommendation to consider is that RCMP contract increases in future years, including the transition to paying 90% of the pooled costs, which will likely happen in 2027, be phased in beginning in 2023. Although the impacts are difficult to estimate, information has been attached which illustrates the projected annual increases and require property tax revenue increases for each year. Property tax increases of 2.1% for 2023 through to 2026, leaving 2.19% needed for 2027 when that increase actually happens. And with those increases, that would accumulate enough revenue to cover the impact of the anticipated annual increases and the city's inevitable population change. This approach, if we do start to transition these increases in before the actual adjustment happens, it will accumulate funds in the city's reserves, and that will would be available to help stabilize other operational expenses. These increases would be evaluated each year during the budget cycle based on new information and changes in the RCMP forecasts, because they do change. So, but it is something that we should look at trying to plan for now. So council does have the option currently of using the 2021 ICF revenue that's in reserves to cover the projected increases in the RCMP contract. So this would lower our proposed overall increase of 3.86% that we've anticipated in the 2022 budget. But it is important to remember that anytime we pull money out of reserves, it's not sustainable. And the RCMP contract is an annual cost, and the property tax increases would have to be made up in future years. So it would just be able to pause the inevitable increase. So that's information on RCMP. So next, I'm just going to talk about the proposed tax rate bylaw that we hope to be bringing forward very soon, and what it looks like based on the 2022 budget as it was passed. So I have attached some information illustrating the amount of property tax revenue. So this first part is in regards to the revenue that we collect and how we levy it to residential properties versus non-residential properties. So again, I've attached illustrations with the amount of property tax revenue that would be collected from residential properties versus non-residential properties. And the examples that I've used is the same approach that we took in the 2021 year, which showed that 69.54% of cities' required property tax revenue would be levied on residential properties, and 30.46% would be levied on non-residential properties. So the MGA does allow council to manipulate that ratio. However, it requires that non-residential tax rates not exceed 5 times of that of the residential tax rate, or a 5-to-1 ratio. This current split is a 1.45-to-1 ratio. The next illustration that I've attached is an analysis of the revenue that we've collected based on the 2022 budget, and it illustrates the municipal property tax revenues collected would increase 3.89%. I think it should be 3.86%. Let's see about that. Anyways, so it's the same as what was in the budget. Maybe I used 3.86. Where are we at? Anyways, 3.89 or 3.86, whichever the budget shows, over 2021, which was established in the budget. The revenue that will be collected through property taxes on behalf of the Alberta School Foundation has increased by 1.05%, and the amount of revenue collected on behalf of Newell Foundation has increased 15.96% over 2021. Just remembering that amount is quite small, so the 15% sounds like a lot, but it's not in relation to the amount that we levy. So that should say 3.86%. Sorry about that in the memo. Assessment changes. An analysis of assessment changes is also attached, illustrating the city's residential farmland assessments has increased by 1.57 over the 2021 assessments. The assessments for other non-residential property and other non-residential property is all non-residential property that is not vacant. And that increased by 0.22%, and vacant non-residential property assessments decreased by 2.54%. So just before I go on to impact analysis, I just wanted to add one thing in regards to the residential versus non-residential property tax splits. We have split the revenue that we collect based on residential and non-residential. Also, in our impacts, we've assumed that we would continue to take that amount and increase the vacant non-residential property tax by 2 mills, so that there is a higher taxation for vacant non-residential property, and the amount that we collect off of that goes to reduce the other non-residential property. So that assumption has remained as well in our impact analysis. So based on no changes to the 2022 budget, the impacts to each property classification are attached and can be summarized as follows. Residential farmland, for every $100,000 of assessment, property owners would be paying $24.53 more in total property taxes than in 2021. On the average home with an assessment of about $224,000, total property taxes will increase by $54.94. In the attachment, there's details breaking down the increases between municipal taxes, Alberta School Foundation taxes, and Newell Foundation property taxes. For other non-residential properties, for every $100,000 of assessment, property owners would be paying $31.43 more in total property taxes than in 2021. And for every $500,000 of assessment, total property taxes will increase by $157.15. And again, the detail is there. We tend to not look at an average non-residential property because they vary so much, with industrial being in there as well. So just based on $100,000 and $500,000 worth of assessment. For vacant non-residential properties, for every $100,000 of assessment, property owners would be paying $31.23 more in total property taxes than in 2021. And on the average, which is assessed at on the average assessment, average parcel, which is assessed at about $138,000, total property taxes will have increased about $43.10. And again, details between Municipal Alberta and Newell Foundation is attached. Therefore, administration is recommending that the tax rate bylaw be forwarded to the May 2nd, 2022 Council meeting for consideration based on the property tax revenues projected in the 2022 budget, and that Council accepts the RCMP contract information in this report as information. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions? You, oh, go ahead, Councilor Woodruff, yeah.
I know I've brought this up before. Shelley knows exactly what I'm going to ask, I think, about the, like, so if we don't touch the ICF, right, and, or if we let that money come from, use the ICF and then not adjust the tax rate, I know it is pausing the inevitable increase, But just for, you know, discussion's sake, is that such a bad thing? Like, I know that eventually they will have to come up. But I don't know, perhaps there's something to be said about collecting tax revenue for something that we're not actually using at this time. I don't know.
So through the chair to Councillor Wardrop, I'm going to answer that in two parts. So we did plan to use the reserve money to phase in an increase that already has happened. So we plan to use the reserve money, which we don't need to use anymore. And there is still an option of using that reserve money, and whether it's good or bad is up to council. And really, it depends on what could be used with that money, other than the RCMP increase. But as far as using money that or collecting money that because this increase is happening now, we already are being billed for it. So if we use reserves, then we would be using reserves for an amount that we actually should be taxing. Anything sustainable. Moving forward, though, I think what I'm thinking is moving forward for 2023 and on, the city doesn't have to increase taxes and phase it in. We can wait until it happens, but the impact would be fairly large. So that's just an option, and it's suggested to do that. But any phase-in program for an expenditure that we haven't realized yet, that could be manipulated in any way or however council wants to deal with it. But in this case, for these contract increases, they are realized in this year. So it is basically a sustainable approach to use tax dollars to fund those, if that helps.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Prentice.
So basically what you're looking at is about a 4% increase each year. So what you're suggesting, like just across the board.
So
does that include, like we've got union things coming up and all that, does that include all that, or is that a separate item again? Is that gonna be another 1.5% for that and we're up to 6 or 7%, or how is that?
So through the chair to Councillor Prentice, thank you for asking that, because I will tell you my assumptions when I laid out what we have to phase in. So the 4% increase that is effective April 1st, 2022 is only on members' salaries. And of course, the cost of a member includes many things other than just the salaries, as do the departmental expenses, or the detachment expenses that we get charged, accommodation costs and things like that. So because with the lack of forecasts, what I did, or what Alan and I agreed to do for the forecast, is to increase the 2022-23 contract amount by 4% in its entirety, and the contracts beyond that, 2.5% in their entirety, which is equal to the pay raises that will happen in 2023. Beyond 2023, they don't have a union contract, so we don't know what they'll be. So those are assumptions, and I feel that they're fairly conservative, and hopefully they would catch all of those increases, like the body-worn cameras and psychological support services that they've told us that they're going to be increasing for. But without information from them and forecasts from them, again, they're just budget assumptions, just like the assumptions we used in the 2022 budget. So we kind of have to wait and see what comes out. But we both felt that that was a pretty conservative estimate.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Jessica?
Thanks, Shelley. Do we know what the tax increases that we don't have any control on are going to be, like education? Do we have those numbers yet? For
beyond this year, I'm not positive that you know what, I don't think we know for sure. I think usually that comes out with the education budget each year. There might be information that alludes to what their plan is, but I don't actually know that right now. I'm not sure if there is or not.
Okay, any other? No, yeah. No, I'm in favor of the recommendation. Basically, we cover the costs of the RCMP retro pay, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Maybe the federal government will come through and cover those costs on that, and that would make our life a lot easier, in that case there too. And the other thing too is any unexpected costs that we have, coming up here in the near future there too. So, okay. All in favor of the recommendation? Okay, carried. Okay, the media, is Sandra on the line there, Bruce? Sandra's not on the line, okay. We can adjourn this meeting at 5:25.